3 decades has provoked global condemnation and fears for the fate of whales. 5 small ships sailed out today to begin hunting for minke and Baird's-beaked whales. An official ban had been imposed on commercial whaling, but Japan came under criticism for continuing the practice in the name of scientific research until 1988, as the meat of whales began appearing on store shelves and restaurants. Campaigns for Japan to leave the International Whaling Commission and resume hunting had continued for years by industry supporters and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The quota for this year has been reported to include around 220 whales.
And conservationist Bob Brown has been advocating against the hunting of whales for decades. He spoke with Gemma Vaness for ABC News Tonight and took aim at the Australian Prime Minister for what he says was a lack of action to highlight the issue at the G20 summit last week.
Bob Brown, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Gemma.
What's your reaction to the resumption of commercial whaling in Japan after 31 years?
My reaction is the same as millions of Australians, just horrified that this bloody, cruel, disgusting and completely unnecessary killing of these giant creatures, these warm-blooded cousins of ours, mammals, in the oceans, is about to get underway for so-called commercial purposes. It's a job loser, it's a money loser, it's not profitable except it's propped up by the taxpayers, but it happens to be a home base for Prime Minister Abe Shinzo, and the whaling fleet's got his backing.
It will limit their hunt to waters off their coast. Is that not preferable to hunting in the Southern Ocean?
It's great they've been hunted out of the Southern Oceans by global opinion, and Sea Shepherd and others being such champions to, and of course Australia and New Zealand took them to the World Court where they were found to be guilty of illegal behaviour. Now, on this occasion, they're breaching the global agreement, the International Whaling Commission agreement. They left that yesterday so they could start harpooning whales today. That's the first time Japan's done that since the Second World War. And wouldn't you know, it's Shinzo Abe doing that to the environment and to some of the most loved creatures by us human beings on the planet. That's whales. These days, worldwide, there's much more commerce and jobs coming out of looking at whales, but there's this small coterie of countries, 3 others besides Japan in Northern Europe, that want to go out and carry on with this disgusting and bloody business. Australia did away with it. Back then, the Fraser government in 1978, same arguments. Oh, you're going to lose jobs. Oh, you know, this is an established industry. Oh, this is cultural. Bunkum. This is now an affront to the global community. And Japan might not be ashamed of itself. At least there's a growing number of Japanese people who are disgusted with it too, of course. But the authorities there are going to feel the outrage around the planet as this disgusting business proceeds.
You mentioned culture there. How do you balance tradition with conservation?
Well, they've only resumed whaling in commercial whaling since 1994 in these waters, but you judge it against decent human feelings towards this little planet. The market for whale meat's fallen from some 200,000 tonnes when I was a young fella to about 5,000 tonnes now, and that's propped up by the government. A great disservice to the Japanese people, but the government's there, it's funding it, and there's these 5 ships going out today. Of course, just after the G20 leaders got together. And what did our Prime Minister say to Abe Shinzo? What did he say to him about the disgust Australians feel about this? And what action is Scott Morrison, has he taken on behalf of this? There were appeals to him when he went there. He knew this was high on the agenda. And you know what, Gemma? He cowardly said nothing. He said on election night he was there for all Australians. Well, at this meeting in Osaka, he let all Australians down.
A poll by the state broadcaster in Japan found that more than half, and it was 52% of the population, welcomed the withdrawal from the IWC last year. Why do you think that is?
That just shows a downward trend, because there used to be huge popular support for this. But the fact that they could get a poll in Japan which just showed 52% supported them withdrawing from the IWC, there's a whole lot of, you know, the propaganda for this from the government is huge in Japan. But that they had 48% of people in Japan saying don't do this is a stunning commentary on the rise of anti-whaling feeling in Japan at home base, and it's only going to get bigger.
Have you had any discussions with Sea Shepherd about any action they plan to take?
I've been a great supporter, of course, former chair of Sea Shepherd Australia when they were hunting the Japanese whalers with their grenade-tipped harpoons in our Antarctic sanctuary way back then. No, I'm not privy to the reaction that's coming down the line, but Japan's reputation is going to stay now in the full glare of this bloody business, and the world's going to know about it, and it's a loser. It's a loser for Japan, and these whales are going to suffer unimaginable, unnecessary agony. And where is our government? This is the Pacific. This is part of the planet. Australia's been a leader in this. Not a peep out of our Prime Minister. Nothing from our Minister for the Environment. Nothing from our Foreign Minister. It's I think, the lowest point in Australia's defence of the great whales for 50 years.
What are you calling on Scott Morrison to do as an immediate action now?
Firstly, look at the legal options. I know that the IWC is an agreement, but surely that is the global law. What about the law of the seas? Be looking at that, but eyeball your counterpart in Japan and at least explain to the Prime Minister and the people of Japan why Australia, and that's the half of the people in Japan who apparently think this is okay, why Australians, who used to have a whaling industry of our own, feel this is such a shocker in 2019.
Bob Brown, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Gemma.
And we did invite the Environment Minister, Susan Lee, to discuss the issue. She was unavailable.
The WA government says it'll look at whether WA's